This is episode 124, and we are live in Southwest Florida. The beach, this is the beautiful Gulf of Mexico behind me. I came down to the farthest parking area at the beach this morning, parking area 5, and this is where we have all those gorgeous driftwood structures and trees, and well, actually we have more of the cypress trees down at parking structure 1 and 2. I think there might be one. Yeah, there's one here. You can see one cypress over there, but we have a lot more driftwood in this section, and I just love this place so much. I'm so happy to be here. So happy that you can join me. If you're joining me live, please say hello. Is it Friday today now? Happy Friday. Hi Judy and Lily and Joe, Melissa. Good morning everybody. Hi Anna and Lisa and Julie and Jill, Karen, Thea. Good morning. Welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast, episode 824. Hi Diane and Kathy. I'm Kristin Omdahl, and this is the magnificent Gulf of Mexico behind me. Hi Rita and Christine, Sharon. Christine's saying it's blurry. Is anyone else having problems with it being blurry? Hi Leona. I mean, it could certainly be my camera, but it doesn't look blurry to me, so if anybody else could let me know. Lisa's saying yes. Yes, it's blurry, or yes, it's blurry. It's not blurry here. Let me see if I can. It's possible I have gotten makeup on the camera. It happens. I'm far from perfect. Let's see if that helps. Okay, how's that? Is it less blurry now? How about now? Let me know if it's less blurry from wiping my camera. Still blurry. Okay, then I guess it's a connection issue, because if it was my camera, wiping it would have made it better, but it's not blurry for me, so it must have something to do with signal, I guess. All right, well, if it's an issue, we can always stop. Otherwise, I can try to keep going. Hi, G. Good morning. It's watchable. All right. Well, then if it's watchable, we'll keep going. Naomi says it's good for her, and Joe says it's fine. The beach is quite loud today. Can you tell how loud the water is? Can you tell how strong the current is today? In fact, the flags at the beach are saying you are not allowed to swim here today because the current is so strong. They have different colors. In fact, let me go show you. I think this is actually kind of interesting. So there is a color system for the flags at the beach. These are beaches that don't have lifeguards, so they usually put up flags to let you know the water conditions. And so if the flag is purple, it means there's stinging marine life like man-o-wars, jellyfish, and sting. Now that I mentioned it, can you see how strong the current is in the water? Can you see how strong the current is now that I mentioned it? It's going from left to right. Can you see the water moving that way? It's going that way. I could sense it as soon as I got here. I didn't even have to see the signs. I knew the water looked rough. Not from a surface waves rough, but from that undercurrent. It looks very strong to me. Oh, good. Some people are saying the picture is better now. Wonderful. Well, we've got lots of things. I brought lots of things to talk about today. I get questions all the time about all sorts of things, obviously, but I get lots of questions about wanting to make changes to a pattern because it doesn't work for someone's specific body type. And this is a wonderful discussion, and one of the reasons why we all love to make our own clothing. We love to be able to customize our wardrobe, right? Whether it's choosing the exact length of your sleeves or the exact length of your hemline. There are so many wonderful ways that you changing the color, mixing and matching colors, adding a belt, adding trim, adding beads. There's so many ways that we can customize our clothing, and it's not the only reason why we love to make our own stuff, but it's definitely one of the reasons. And having said that, I often also say that a pattern is the starting point. You start with a pattern, and then you can even customize things even further. For example, by changing the color. I'm wearing the original Sweet Claret top today in a beautiful raspberry pink, but you can choose to make it in any color, right? So there's your first option of customizing a pattern further. Now, I do get questions all the time about how to change something beyond what the options that are given in a pattern. Now, a pattern will come, my patterns anyway, come in a huge size range, so you can find a size that works for you. Now, having said that as well, you can choose if you want to wear something oversized for a beach cover-up or more fitted as a fitted top by changing the size that you make. You don't have to be a size 36. You don't have to make the size 36 if you want to wear, let me back up. Let's say you normally make a size 36 because that's the size you wear. But what about making a 40 or a 44 to make something oversized for a cover-up? I'll give you an example of Judy Weingarten example, actually. Many years ago, she went with me to a trade show in Atlanta, I believe. Was it in Atlanta or was it in Nashville, maybe? Maybe Nashville. And we both wore the Meshberry top. And if I find the photo, I will share it with you guys. I wore this size, the size 36. Now, Judy and I are approximately the same size, and I made the size 36, and she made a larger size, and it ended up looking like a totally different garment because it was oversized, and that is such a gorgeous look. In addition, so even if you have a pattern and you make it in one size, you don't have to stop there. You can make it in a different size to get a completely different look. So hers was a lot baggier than mine. Mine was more fitted, and she could have worn it loose and open. She could have belted it. She could have cinched it. There's all sorts, worn it off her shoulder. Like, there's so many different ways to wear something by what size you choose to make for how much ease you want. The technical word is ease. If you want something with negative ease, zero ease, or positive ease, that's how baggy or tight you want something. We've talked about this before, but it's always a good conversation. I personally prefer to wear my clothing with a little bit of negative ease, but that's me. And you can choose to do things in any way you want. In fact, sometimes it is just nice to have both. Sometimes it's nice to have things with a negative ease or a zero ease that are fitted, and it's nice to have things that are oversized for a completely different look. We all like variety too, right? So for example, so that's one example. The other, another type of a question that I get all the time is, I want my neckline wider than the pattern it has, or I want my neckline tighter than the pattern features. And this is such an easy fix. You can add or take away depending on the construction style in advance. Or if you want to make something more, let's see, what would be the right word for that, more substantial, you can add a neckline or add a different neckline or add more neckline. For example, so this Sweet Claret top comes slightly off my shoulders here, okay? I love that look, you know that. I like to wear things on one shoulder. I like things nice and wide at my neck. I do not like a tight neckline, and that's my choice. Now, if you wanted to add a neckline here, it's so easy. So it depends on the construction style of how you're going to do it. This particular top happens to have a foundation oval neckline. So I don't remember which one it has. It could be a chain 3 double crochet. It could be a chain 4 treble crochet. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's a good thing because that means I can speak to you in theory so that no matter what kind of neckline your top has, this will apply to whatever it is. So whether you have a neckline with a chain, a foundation oval, any size foundation oval, knit or crocheted, it doesn't matter. You want to do some form of decreases in this opening so that as you can create height by doing more rows or rounds, you would add some decreases so that it also narrows as it goes up. So you can do this in a variety of ways too. You can change your hook size or knitting needle size. Let's say, I believe this top was made with a 5mm crochet hook. So let's say you went to a 4mm or 3.5mm. That's one way to create decreases if you're uncomfortable using decrease stitches, and it's about experimentation at that point too. How much decrease do you want? How hot? So let's say you did about an inch worth, maybe that's 3 or 4 rows or rounds. You could add decreases and or decrease your hook size to create a neck opening. So as this went up about an inch, you would end up having a neckline about here. Great, right? Now this also applies to any other patterns as well. I'm not seeing comments all of a sudden, so I don't know if I'm here by myself or we're talking. But I brought a bunch of garments today so that if you wanted to ask me about any particular thing about customizing them, if I have an answer for you, I will share it with you. Another question I get asked is, you didn't add button bands on a vest or a cardigan. And that's because I just don't care for them all the time. But you could absolutely do that as well. And that would be working. Oh, you're just listening. All right, Lily. You know, it's hard to say when we're live, right? Sometimes it could just be that my conversation, what I'm saying is interesting, or it could be that I've lost you. You never know. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to show you a bunch of garments, and we'll talk about the neckline, and we'll talk about button bands, and if you have any other type of customizing questions, I'll answer those too. And if you want me to take these on and off to further discuss it, we can do that too. I brought knitting and crochet pieces. So I'm wearing the Sweet Clara pullover right now. Here's the Sweet Clara vest, so what the heck. Let's put this one on. So you would work in rounds, obviously, to add a neckline to that one. In this one, you could add rows. The other thing that you could do, if you really want to do something super quick and easy, you could just make a long chain for crochet or a long I-cord in knitting, and you could just thread it through there and tighten it up a little bit and make a little bow. I think a bow to tighten up the neckline would be pretty tied in a bow on the back center or on the back front, so you could do that as well. Same with this one. I didn't even, you notice here, I laced from not the top but from further down. So if you didn't like how wide this one is, you could definitely lace it right from the top here, or put a button here, or add a complete button band to be able to button the whole thing down the front. But I like things open and wide, but that doesn't mean that you have to. These are all options that you can use as well. Long comment, sorry I couldn't read all of that. Okay, so now let's look at a knitting pattern. And it depends on the type of construction that you're using too. This is the Little Hickory Lace Cape. This is a knit pattern. This is one of my all-time favorite knitting patterns. And this one is worked from the bottom up. So we start at the bottom with these gorgeous scallops. Have to stand up, or get up so you can see it. See all those scallops down there. So it starts there, and then we decrease the pattern from here. So we work even in pattern, then we do one row of major decreases and come up to here, and it gives us this wide of a neckline. It is really pretty. I love this piece. I love wearing it. I think it looks so beautiful on. And then it even has self ties on this last row, which is cool. So you cast on and bind off on each side of that last row to give you these ties, which I think is just so, I don't mean to sound boastful by saying it's clever. I'm not saying I'm clever. I'm saying I think it's a clever construction. But anyway, then there's nothing to sew on. But let's say you, this is called the Little Hickory Knit Lace Cape. And, oh, thanks, Judy. Judy's posting a link to it. let's say you wanted this to have a smaller neckline. This one would be super easy to do too. At this last row, because it's worked bottom up, and this would apply to any pattern that's worked bottom up, you could add your decreases here before you bind off. So let's say, I don't know how many stitches this is in this last row, but before you do the bind off with the self ties, I would do a couple more rows, maybe just in garter stitch, maybe just straight knitting rows, but you can either decrease your hook size, decrease your needle size, or add decreases along those last couple of rows to tighten it up, so that not only would you be tightening up this neckline, but you would also be creating a long height to it as well. So as the rows grow in this way, they also decrease to frame your face. And then right before the end, then you could add the ties. Does that make sense? Thank you, Yarn It Out. It is very pretty. This one is in Be So Fine yarn. The last two that I showed were Be So Sporty patterns. This is a Be So Fine pattern. All right, so let's see. Okay, here's a different construction. This is great to show the different constructions so that I can really try to demystify all the different ways that you could customize these things. And if you want me to bring any of those back out to talk about other ways to customize them, we can do that too. This is the Fernanda top, and if you recall, this one is worked sideways, okay? And then, what did we do at the top here? Do we sew them together? I don't remember off the top of my head, but let's say that you're done and you don't understand how the construction was done. No problem. You could actually sew these together, and if there's a width to it, let's see, I'm going to take it off so we can really deep dive on this one. And it's good that I don't remember. That means I have to understand the construction just like you would. Okay, there is no gap here. The reason I was checking is that if there was a gap here, let's say that there was a shoulder tab here, so that there was a line here between the front and the back, then how you add a narrow neckline would be different. But it's not. This one is just a straight sewn. You could totally just sew right here. So if you just wanted to make this one narrower, they're done. You would just sew however much you want to sew on either side to make it a narrower top. And yeah, it changes the look completely, doesn't it? So you could make it wide and open like mine, or you could sew up more of that shoulder seam. So anytime something doesn't have a round or a square or a rectangle opening at the top, and I'll show you an example with the Summer Love Vest that does have that shape. Anytime something doesn't, if it has this kind of a shape, meaning there's a gap here for the shoulder, you would have to do something other than just sew, because it would give you some puckering. So in that kind of a situation, if you're not comfortable working in decreases or anything, you could add tiny little motifs there to close up that gap as well. And I'll show you that on the next one. So anyway, this is the Fernanda top, Be So Sporty yarn. And for this one, if you wanted to change the neckline, you could just sew more of the shoulder seam to make a narrow neckline. It's super easy to do. This pattern could also get sleeves added to it. You could totally just work right from the opening here and work even in patterns. So remember, this one went side to side like this. We worked back and forth in rows and worked side to side. You could pick up on any part of this stitch pattern and just decide how long you want your sleeve. Mark it with some of those split ring stitch markers, like put on the top, figure out where you would want your sleeve to be, maybe here or here, and you would mark it on both sides before taking it back off. Take it off, and then work even in this stitch pattern to make the sleeve as long as you want. Does that make sense? So if you wanted to add sleeves to that, that would be very easy to do. All right, what was the next one I was going to show? Oh, the next one I was going to show is the Mandy knit pullover. This one is also a bottom-up construction. So for this one, you could choose to make neckline wider or narrower based on the same kind of construction as this the little hickory lace cape, it's a bottom up. So if you wanted this to be a tighter neckline, you could decrease your knitting needles before bind off, or you could do a couple of decreases and work a couple of rounds in just straight knitting before binding off. And that way you could create a more significant neckband and a narrower neckband if you wanted. Okay? All right, what's next? So, okay, two more. This one, someone might have to help me with the name, I've lost it. This is a Motif vest, Motif topper vest from Layers Crochet, and it is a single pattern on my website as well, but I can't remember the name. Okay, I love this one. This is the one that was rejected by a, by a magazine years ago. They sent it back to me and said, perhaps you sent swatches and didn't send your finished garment. I said, no, perhaps you could send it back to me and I will publish it myself. Anyway, it's so cute. All right, so let's say this one is too open and you don't like it. Let's say you don't like tying it with a corset tie and tassels like I did. I love this type of construction. But let's say you wanted them a little more substantial. You could pick up along the edge here, and just like we talked about when we were talking about the Sweet Clara, where I said you would want to work your stitches into the foundation ovals or the single crochets or the chains, whatever is at that neckline. The same applies to motifs. Let's say that there's a couple of stitches and then a couple of chains on the edge of the motif. If you're wanting to work even working a row of stitches, you would work 1 for 1. If there's a chain 3, you put 3 chains. If there's 2 double crochets, you would put 1 for 1. 1 stitch in each stitch and 1 stitch in each chain. Now, if you want to add decrease, so if you wanted to decrease the neck here, you might want to put less stitches than 1 for 1. But if you're wanting to make a button band down here, then you would want to work 1 for 1. So it depends on what you're looking to do. Are you looking to just add some more body to this and add some more meat to it and add like a thick band? Then you could do 1 for 1 of it. If you want it to be tighter at all anywhere, then you would do less than 1 for 1. I want to stop here for a second and make sure that makes sense. And I'll show you the motif up close so you can see what I mean. So see how there's double crochet chain 1 along there? 1 for 1 would be a stitch in the double crochet, a stitch in the chain, a stitch in the double, a stitch in the chain. Chain 3 here, 3 stitches there. So if you wanted to work even and just carry on in a solid band of double crochet, single crochet, treble crochet, you would do 1 for 1 there. Knitting would be the same way if you're going to pick up and knit into the side of something. It depends on the gauge, especially if you could be working into the side of something. It might be pick up and knit 1 for every 2 stitches or 1 for every end of row. That's actually a good point for these as well. Let's say you wanted to work into the end of rows. There's different rules that apply to that too. Oh, it can get complicated, but these are simple rules once you get them. So let's put on the Summer Love Vest real quick so I can show you what I'm talking about in end of rows. If you need to pick up something in the end of rows, it's different than when you're picking it up into stitches. So, and it kind of applies to foundation ovals too. So with a foundation oval, excuse me, if you want to work even and it's a chain 3 double crochet, you could do 1 for 1, 3 chains, 3 stitches. And if you want something a little tighter, you might put in 2 in there. And sometimes it depends on your gauge or which part of the garment you're trying to add to, and it might just be something that you experiment with. Try working 1 for 1. Try working 1 for 2 or 1 for 3 or 2 for 3 or 3 for 4. What do I mean by that? For every 4 chains, you would only add 3 stitches. This is pretty common in knitting because when you're working along the end of rows, it's kind of like single crochet, so it's all the single stitches. So sometimes it'll say pick up every pick up every 3 out of 4 stitches. Well, the same can apply in crochet. It depends on how tight or loose or how much volume or ruffle or lack of ruffle or decrease that you're looking to do. Let's say you're working into the bottom of something and you want to add a ruffle. There you're going to add more than 1 for 1. Does that make sense? Sometimes you're going to double an entire stitch count for a ruffle. It depends on the type of ruffle you're looking to do. Generally speaking, I add a minimum of double stitches for a ruffle. In fact, double stitches sometimes is a subtle ruffle, and I have a pattern coming soon that I will share with you when we get to it. It has a ribbed ruffle border, and it is done with just doubling the stitches, and you'll see on it that it's not a really hard ruffle. It's actually a subtle ruffle. So if you wanted to add a more dramatic ruffle, you would probably want to triple your stitch count. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so we're back to this one again. So the neckline on this one actually starts here. So if I wanted this to be tighter on me, I would start the stitch time from here. If I wanted to add a button band all down the front, I would start it from the neckline here. I'm going to come close so you can see. And this is also an example of something that I said, get out of the sun, where it has a little bit of a shoulder piece here. So just sewing this would not be the solution on this one. If you were to just sew right here, you'd have a little bit of puckering because there is a little bit of a side piece there. So on a piece like this, you would want to, if you wanted to add a neck band on this one, you would start at the foundation oval row at the top here, and you would add on and do some sort of a decrease, whether it's working less than. Is there a video of this piece? This is the Summer Love Vest. It's a pattern on my website, and there's a video series for it. I'm pretty sure there's videos for everything that I've shown you here this morning, and I've said all of the names. You can certainly search my name on my website for the patterns and on my YouTube channel for the videos. And Judy's been very, very helpful this morning in adding live links as I've been going, so that could be helpful as well. This one does not have sleeves in the pattern, I believe, but you could absolutely continue on in pattern to add sleeves to this. You would just work in the round around the sleeve hole opening. What else? So I've talked about a neckband. Oh, button band, for a button band along the front. So if you're going to do a button band along the front of this one, you would have to work into end of rows, I believe. Nope, a button band. So a band was crocheted onto the fronts of both sides of this. So if you wanted to add buttonholes on one of the sides, you would simply add a chain and skip a repeat of the pattern. So for this one, it's some sort of a shell. So whatever the shell is, or whatever the stitch pattern is, if you wanted to skip some of it and add a buttonhole. Or if crochet is actually more forgiving than knitting when it comes to adding buttons after the fact. So this stitch pattern at the opening here is actually quite open, where if you got the right size button, you could totally add them on the opposite side. Now, the hard part then is getting them in the same exact spot every time. So here's what I would suggest. Let's say you were going to put buttons on this side and you wanted to add buttonholes on this side. After the fact, you're done crocheting, I would take your yarn needle, and I would exaggerate a spot here and like embroider around where the buttonhole opening should be. Does that make sense? Should probably do a demo of that one of these days, but I want to make sure that that makes sense. So you would find the spot that is exact opposite where you're adding the button. Let's say this is the exact opposite spot. And so you would want to exaggerate that hole by creating a more solid border around it. So you could do that by crocheting a little ring around there, or you could take a yarn needle and some yarn and kind of just stitch around it to create that opening. And then it would be more obvious and you would be able to put it right on top of the button anytime you wanted. So And honestly, you could do this in knitting too. It's probably less forgiving in a stockinette section. But if you wanted to add a buttonhole where there wasn't one, you could do that. You know you can manipulate stitches. So you could actually, you could stretch out an area here, or you could definitely do it in a lacy section. Does that make sense? I covered a lot today. I don't know if I covered it thoroughly. I don't know if I moved too fast, but I think that I shared quite a few different ways that you can further customize your patterns beyond all of the customization options that are in my patterns. I feel like my patterns usually come with a lot of customization ideas, but I feel like these are a lot of tips that you can use on my patterns and on any patterns, not just mine. Let's say you've got a pattern from anybody and you're like, it has this I like, it has this I like, it's not, and mine too. I don't expect everybody to like every aspect of every pattern. That's why I'm saying I get questions all the time. I don't like this about this pattern. What can I do to make it like this? Well, these are tips that you can apply to any pattern. You want the neck bigger, you want the neck narrower, you want buttons, you don't want buttons. That's funny, Judy. Yes, I do believe there are other patterns out there. Just like there are other yarns, there's other YouTubers, there's other everything I do, there are other people that do it too. And that's why I'm so grateful, and that's why every single day I end the show with thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to spend a few minutes here with me. I know you have other choices. I know you have other choices for everything that I put out there and do, and that's why I tell you all the time how grateful I am for your time, your energy, and your support of my business. You all do so much for me, and I'm very, very grateful. Thank you. Hi, Tina. Welcome. All right. Well, we've gone over today, but we did lots of good stuff. So let's go over a little bit longer. Let's do a quote. Let's find a good one. Well, no, let's just stay in order. Okay, we did Benjamin Franklin yesterday. I remember that. No, we did Confucius yesterday. The next one is by Booker T. Washington. There is no power on earth that can neutralize the influence of a high, pure, simple, and useful life. That's a long one, so let's let that sink in for a second, and then I'll say it again. There's no power on earth that can neutralize the influence of a high, pure, simple, and useful life. I think there's more to this than what I'm even picking up on right now. I would have to sit here and there's a lot to this. There's probably a lot more about being a good example for other people too. But this really is so true just for how you feel about yourself. That's where I'm taking it first, is that when you live a pure, simple, and useful life, you feel so good about yourself, and and the haters and the naysayers really don't have as much effect on you when you know in your heart you're doing well, or putting in the best effort that you can. None of us are perfect, but when you wake up in the morning and have the intention to give the best that you can in what you do, it's much harder for naysayers or negative people to affect you when you know you're doing the best you can. So thank you, Booker T. Washington. And I'm sure that if I went deeper into this, yes, there's something to be said about being a good influence on other people when you live like that as well. But for me, I make the choice every day to do the best that I can with what I have, and it makes me feel good when I go to sleep at night. It always does. I know that I did the best that I can. Did I do a perfect job every day? Heck no. Are there things that I would like to change about the things that came out of my mouth? Yes. There are things that I say and do that I maybe aren't the best choices, but I start each day with the intention of giving it my best, and that I'm always proud of. So thank you, Booker T. Washington. There is no power on earth that can neutralize the influence of a high, pure, simple, and useful life. Beautiful. Love it. All right. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend a few minutes here with me. I hope you enjoyed the beach. the colors, the sounds, this magnificent place. I hope you enjoyed my little demo, all my little demos of showing you tips and tricks to further customize your handmade wardrobe even more than you already do and love to do. I hope that was fun. I hope you enjoyed chatting with me and everyone else. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and I will see you Monday. Bye.